Okay, we're in Kufit Gimel Halacha Yud. That's going to be the easy one. Halacha Yud. Halacha Yud. Hiniach Yisrael Gabi Kecholm Amimus. A Yid put food onto coals that were not so hot. Shalahoy royally special. They weren't hot enough to cook on them. Kamacham and Drusai. It wouldn't have been hot enough to cook on it. Kamacham and Drusai. Uba Kechom the Hipach by special. And the guy came along and he moved the food around in a way that made it able to cook. Then the din is that it's usher. The food is usher because the Yid, what he did was not able to make it Kamacham and Drusai. So it's not Bishul Yisroel. And the guy was the one who made it edible, and therefore it's considered. Therefore the food is usher. Okay. Now we talked about this halacha. That's why it's going to be so short. In halacha vav, because really, it's really seems to be a fair Gemara, and we talked about what in halacha vav, the Ramah seems to basically say not like this thing that we're seeing right here today. Okay. So we talked about back in halacha vav. For those who remember, why the Ramah doesn't hold this in. What we just read here is seemingly a fair Gemara. Okay, so we took that in halacha vav. Why? What's going on? Why would anybody disagree with this thing? Okay, and then
in practice, we certainly don't like that, right?
Right. In practice, we don't hold like what?
Like what you just read.
No. Why do you say that? The Yid. What we're talking about is that the Yid did something that would have not cooked the food. He put it onto the fire in a way that it wouldn't cook the food, and the guy did the whole cooking. Basically, the
global process.
That's different, and that's what we talked about then. Is that if it cooked in a fire, and the Yid was the Hashgachah's key statement to the fire, he participated in the cooking, in the fire that cooked it. Here, he didn't participate in the cooking. The one who did the cooking was the guy. What the Yid did had nothing to do with the cooking.
So that's why every global process. That's what's happening. They have a little global that can't cook anything.
But that's a Hashgachah's key statement into an existing fire, to the fire that cooks. The fire that cooks has a Yid's participation in it. Here, the fire that cooks had no Yid's participation. Because the Yid did a little thing that had nothing to do with it. Okay, so
the Shulchan just said if a Jew lit a kisim and kacholim and did everything, he did a whole bunch of things, it's just not enough to cook.
Yes.
And the guy came along as mahafach and it cooked.
The guy now, right? So the Yid, what we're saying is that what the Yid did was something that had nothing to do with the cooking of the food. Correct?
Even though the guy was mahafach, the Yid's fine.
No, it wasn't mahafach the fire. It happened for food. He moved the food into a way that it could cook. Until now, it couldn't cook.
Oh, he moved the food?
He moved the food, yeah, I'm sorry if I wasn't clear. He moved the food in a way that make it that now the food can cook. Until now, the food was, let's say, if this was the fire, the food was over here. It would have never cooked.
It's too far from the fire.
Yeah, it was the way that it was going to cook. Now, what you're saying, the truth is, you're being remembering, Chazar Sashir, back then there were those who held that when the Gemara doesn't say Hashgachah's Kisei, it's not a Gemara, it's from Rishonim later on, the Ramah, since the Paskin like that, Hashgachah's Kisei works, that's going not like the Gemara. And the reason why the Ramah was making and the Gemara was there is because just like Hashgachah's Kisei works, also this Gemara is not true also. There were those who held like that. I don't know if you remember. There were those who hold, they answer the kasha, how come the Ramah doesn't hold to this name, which is the Beferish Gemara, because they say, how could this, participating before the cooking, be worse than Hashgachah's Kisei? Which is sort of what you were saying. Okay, yeah.
But it's not, you can be mechal cooking it too.
Of course you can. That was just... What? I'm not sure what the point is. I'm not sure what the... Okay,
yeah. That's a good point. That's why I thought that
was...
He's like, I fixed the gecholim.
Okay. Okay. Anyhow, one more...
I guess because if it wasn't gecholim, it was the guys from sugar, why do you put it so far from the fire?
I'm not sure.
That's what that makes sense. If I must have put it a normal distance from the fire...
How is moving the food going to help?
He put a normal distance from the fire, because the coals are small, it wouldn't help. So then he moved it closer to the fire.
Almost like they're extinguishing everything. Yeah.
Right. I'm not sure what the... Okay, one more thing to mention before we get to the thing we really want to do, which is that in Halacha Ches, we had mentioned the sheet of the Bach, that the Bach says that if a Yid put it onto the fire, and not a little fire, he put it onto a fire, and the guy took it off the fire before it cooked, and put it back on, there was a sheet of the Bach, which we don't all like, which is that it's considered Bishul Yisroel. As long as a guy was the one who took it off the fire, I mean, the Yid put it on, it cooked for 30 seconds, and the guy took it off, and then put it back on, he holds that's Bishul Yisroel. It's only if a Yid would take it off would mess it up. When we talked about that in Halacha Ches, a Yid put it onto the fire, it stayed there for 10 seconds, the guy took it off, and then the guy put it back on.
Right,
so the Bach holds that that's kosher, that food is Bishul Yisroel. And it's, when the Gemara says it's not good, it's only if a Yid took it off. If a guy took it off, it would be fine. If a Yid took it off, it would be no good. Let me talk about in Halacha Ches. And I'm mentioning it now, of course it has to do with this halacha. I'm mentioning it because in the Beishesim on this halacha, he says beferish that even if a guy takes it off, which is of course the Shulchan Shita. We had it back there in Halacha Ches, which is just take it. Okay, Halacha Yud, that's what we're really here for. So Halacha Yud really was back, we had set it back. So before we start Halacha Yud, I just want to remind you, for those of you keeping track, when we start Halacha Vav, from Halacha Vav till here is based on one Gemara. Okay? These bunch of, which is the whole middle of Siman Kuf Yud Gimel, is based on one little Gemara. This is our last din from that Gemara. What does it then say? Hiniach Yisrael agabe ha'esh. A Yid put food onto the fire. Right? And he left a guy watching it. And the guy clearly flipped over the food. He put the burgers on one side, and he comes back there on the other side. Okay, the end you do him but you don't know is, did the guy do it in a way that would have, before it was Macha ben Drusai? I mean, if he would have taken it before Kamacha ben Drusai, then the food would be treif. The guy took it off before it got cooked Kamacha ben Drusai, so it would be Bishul Akum. Or maybe the guy took it off after it was Kamacha ben Drusai. Okay, you don't know at what point he did this then. When did he flip it over? So it's a shiloh. Is it Bishul Yisroel or not Bishul Yisroel? You don't know. You did the beginning. You might have done enough to make it Bishul Yisroel, but you don't know because the guy flipped it over in the middle. No one was there to watch what he did. So what's the din? The Machaber says din is that it's mutter. The food is mutter. It's not Bishul Akum. And the Ramah sticks in the Safek Dvarim Hakel, the Safek Dvarim L'Kul, and therefore we assume that the food was made in the way of heter. And the Ramah adds in V'chein Chol Safek Bishul of Kechavim Uchuyetz B'Mutter. Also other Sfekas in Bishul Akum are also mutter. Because Safek Bishul Akum, because we say Safek Dvarim L'Kul, and it's mutter. Okay, now the Gra says that this din, it's sort of the Gra says that our din is based on a Gemara. That the Gemara says a Yid could leave a piece of meat on the fire and leave the house, and even though the guy flipped it over, the food stays kosher. Okay, so the Gemara, this is a case in the Gemara that Yid can do it. Okay, the Gemara doesn't say this, but the way we have the Gemara and the way the Gemara brings the Gemara, it says in the Gemara, Meiniach Yisroel. A Yid can leave food on the fire, even though the guy is there he'll be there by himself, and the food is kosher and it's not Bishul Akum. It's a Gemara about Bishul Akum, and the Gemara says that it's mutter, it's not Bishul Akum. Which is to say that in this case, we're letting the person. It's not your regular Safek Darbanan L'Kula. Safek Darbanan L'Kula usually means is that if something happened and you're Mesupik about an Isser, and it's only a Safek Darbanan, so it's mutter. It's like a B'di'evet. If it happened already, it's mutter. Here the Gemara doesn't say B'di'evet. The Gemara says Meiniach Yisroel. You could put the food onto the fire. Okay, you're allowed to do that. Not if it happened, you're allowed to do it. Okay, and I say that in contrast to the way the Beis Yosef and the Shulchan Aruch have the gears in the Gemara is Hiniach Yisroel. Okay, if the Shulchan Aruch, so it doesn't say Meiniach Yisroel. It says Hiniach Yisroel, which is if you did it, which is not necessarily mashma, you could do it l'chatchila. Okay, the Gemara says Hiniach. That's just if it happened and you did this thing, then the food is kosher. That's what we're sort of more used to of how you make Safek Darbanan L'Kula is if something happened, then you're allowed to do it, but not saying go ahead and do it as a choice.
The reason you wouldn't be able to be what?
Well, what be any Safek Darbanan? Are you allowed to do that? Are you allowed to put yourself in a situation like that?
There's a lot of Menadini now that are putting yourself in a situation of
I don't know. I'm not sure. That's just an assumption. You think faces is better also. You think you're allowed to do it?
That's okay. Clear?
No, it's not clear. No, I didn't say it's clear. That's my assumption. That
it's definitely better,
Okay, so if that's what you think it is, so the way we know that's maybe you're right, but I don't think it's right because of the next thing which I want to say, which is the Ramah says is the chain calls Safek Bishul of Kechavim L'Cheitzbai. And also all Sfekas of Bishul Yaakov. What is he trying to add in when he says and also all other Sfekas? Okay. So the Taz says that what it means is the Taz says not only is it mutter in this case, but it's even mutter in another case. What happens if you have a food that you know the guy cooked? The guy cooked the food, and you have a suffix, some reason to be misupik. Maybe the Yid was mahapach and did something to the fire to make it Bishul Yisroel. That's also mutter. The chen kol kiyotzeboy means is even in a case with not what you said, even in a case where there's no chazakah that it was made by the Yid. In the case Shulchan Aruch says is the Yid put it onto the fire. So he said, why should I think that something went wrong? I put it onto the fire. Why should I think that something went wrong? Well, even though we know that he flipped it, we do know that he flipped it. But come on, we'll assume that when I put it on, it stayed on the whole time. Yes.
But you know it flipped it.
But
in this case, there's nothing to declare about.
It is because the Gemara case is that the guy turns over. The same case Shulchan Aruch. It's right out of the Gemara. So, but you say is that it started off. I put it on, right? It changed at some point. So in the rules of Chazakah and array, so we'll say is that the Chazakah assumed that happened at the last minute, and you could be makel. Okay, but the Taz is saying it's even mutter in the other case, where we know the guy cooked it, and it's just a suffix. Maybe the Yid helped out into it. Okay, so he's saying it's even the opposite case. Even when there's no Hashgachah that it's mutter, it's a Safek. Maybe it's mutter. You have two rules. Now I don't know if the Taz is saying that in that case you can do l'chatchila. That's like a funny. So saying is l'chatchila for that. Well, we'll hear a case in a second of l'chatchila for that. That's That's what l'chatchila. But I'm saying in the case the Shulchan Aruch said, which is where you started off and it's more settled. The Gra and our Gemara say miniach that you're allowed to do it. Okay, the Shulchan Aruch and Beis Yosef have a gears of hiniach that it happened. Okay, so that would be, I guess, depend whether you do it or not. Okay, so what should be the reason for these kulas? Okay, we're hearing different kulas here. One kula is you might be able to do it with l'chatchila, and one is that you could do it even if you don't have a reason to assume that it's mutter. So I didn't see this inside yet. I'm sorry I didn't have a chance to. But the Chalkos Berman brings from a Shulchan Meshav that he says that Bishul Akum, I think he's talking about Pas Akum. Bishul Akum and Pas Akum are also because of Kashrus, because they have this good feeling towards the person because he did me this favor, and therefore it could potentially lead to Kashrus. So he says, or he's supposed to say, that Isser only happens if I know that he did this thing for me. Where I'm the Safek, the din of Safek is mutter means to say is, since I'm the Safek, I don't have this great feeling to the guy. Okay, I'm not sure if this is psychological. The psychological is like you don't want to be marketed to the person. So if you're even assuming that he maybe did you feel, no, I'm not marketed. It's okay. I don't have to feel. So there's no chasnas because I don't feel any great feeling to the guy because it's not even for sure that it happened. I didn't see it inside. I don't know 100%. Something along those lines. But that would be an explanation for why we have these schools.
That's very interesting. Sure.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't even know.
It almost like if I think that I did do it,
then it's also.
it's also.
I don't know if he's correct. Okay, I didn't see it inside, so I'm not sure. I'm not sure. Okay, so, and I have to just tell you that the machaber that we're seeing, and all these things we talked about, is in the Ged. If someone has a shayla, like a Shulchan Aruch question, we working professionally in Kashrus don't do this. We don't say, Safek Bishul Akum is mutter, and therefore the food is mutter. We would do it. I mean, but the other we would do it. If something happened, something went wrong, and we were misupik, if it became Bishul Yisroel, the din is that it's mutter is mutter. That's okay. The din it would be mutter. We wouldn't set up our and say, well, Safek Bishul Yisroel will be mutter. Okay? So in that vein, if we give that introduction, I'll tell you a story that happened this week. Something I saw this week, just as an example to help us to clarify this case. Okay, I went to a company that this company is open only during the summer months when there's vegetables. They cook vegetables. They're only open during the months during the season when the things are growing. Okay? At the very end of the season, the last thing that they process is a kind of squash, and some people hold that squash needs Bishul Yisroel. Okay? Now the Rav Machshir for this plant, it's not our plant. We don't give Hashgachah. The Rav Machshir for that plant holds it doesn't need Bishul Yisroel. Okay? Why others disagree with him is a different child, not negate. Okay? He holds that it doesn't need. He holds that it's not a Shulchan. That's what he holds. And others disagree. So why they disagree is not negated. He holds it doesn't need Bishul Yisroel. But other people who are going to want to buy his product think that it needs Bishul Yisroel. So what he does is like this. This company, for the 4 or 5 months that they're open during the summer, the boiler goes on at the beginning and it stays on the whole time. It's a big company, big factory, and it has boilers on all the time. So every time he visits, he comes 2-3 times during the summer. So when he's there every time he's there during the season, he relights the boiler, so that at the end of the summer, when they're going to make this one squash that needs Bishul Yisroel, everything else doesn't, this one that might need Bishul Yisroel, it'll be Bishul Yisroel because he lit the fire. So every time he comes, he relights the fire. See, he says, and I said, I hold it doesn't need Bishul Yisroel altogether. So, but I'm trying to help these people. He says, but I have to tell you, I tell these people, I can't guarantee that it's Bishul Yisroel because emergencies might come up and the boiler might go off. And he's not sophisticated enough to be monitoring whether his boiler stays on. And he doesn't really care because he doesn't hold it needs Bishul Yisroel anyhow. He says, but I'm doing something. For those people, for whatever it's worth, I'm doing something. Okay, so what he's doing is exactly what our Machaber said makes the food Bishul Yisroel. He lit the fire. We have a Safek if later maybe something happened that the fire is not through his cooking. Something happened that made us be misupik that went wrong with it. So the din is, now again, we wouldn't give Hashgachah based on that, but the din is that the food is mutter. The din is that the food is Safek Bishul Yisroel. It's definitely a good Safek. He liked the boiler. The boiler should stay on the whole season. There's no reason why it shouldn't. So it's an example of this din that Safek Bishul is mutter. Again, we wouldn't give Hashgachah, and he gives Hashgachah because he doesn't care, because he doesn't think it needs Bishul Yisroel. He doesn't think it needs it. So he's just being nice, so to speak, to these people. But that's an example of how a Safek Bishul Akum, even on sort of on a l'chatchila level, would really be. Okay. Now, there's a side thing which is what I want to talk about. We'll see if I can make it through the whole thing. A side thing, which is the Shulchan Aruch just says, "Hiniach Yisrael gabesh." He left the food on the fire. Okay? The case in the Gemara is not so generic. The case in the Gemara is that he left a piece of meat on the fire. Okay? So the Shach points out that we're talking here about the Bishul Akum of cooking the piece of meat, but you should know, of course, you have to make sure that food is it's not Pasha Salmonayim. You have a piece of meat, you left the guy to the point you don't know when he flipped it over, no one's watching him. So you have to follow the dynamics, I think, Kuf Yeftes, that talk about how do you make sure that food is, that the food is, it's really the kosher piece of meat onto there, and it wasn't switched for a straight piece of meat. So that's sort of like a background to what's going on here. But for me, I want to use it as an excuse to talk to you about a shaila, and David's been talking about it recently a little bit, which is negated not to food service, negated to commercial hashgachah, which is everybody here. Okay, which is like this. Okay, I have to give you a drop of history of this one. When I first started working for the youth, okay, before I started, in the months that I knew I was going to be working there, but I hadn't yet started working there, I prepared a bunch of questions that I had wanted to ask when I started working there. Okay, and almost all those questions I asked at some point as I went along. Okay, and one question never got asked until I was holding by leaving. Okay, I was already at the end. I was about to leave. It was years later. I was getting ready to leave, and this question I brought up, and I joked with Hashgachah at the time that because if I was really right with my question, then I would have no job, and therefore I couldn't leave until I was ready to leave. Now it's because I asked this question. But when anyway, okay. So and the question was like this. The question is, if you look in Kufit Ches, you find out that there's rules about what it takes to be a Yotze V'Nichnas. If you want to leave someone who doesn't keep kosher, who's not Jewish, with food, there's rules of how you have to be, what it means to be Yotze V'Nichnas, that we should say that there's a correct mirsus that the person's afraid you might walk in, and therefore he won't switch your food or do something wrong to it. Okay? Well, one of those rules is, one of the din there is, that if a Yotze V'Nichnas, even if it's a case where you might walk in at any time, he has no idea when you're coming, but if the Yotze V'Nichnas is out for a very long time, that's not Yotze V'Nichnas. Okay, the Shulchan does if the interval is too long, even if he doesn't know when you're coming. I mean, you might come tomorrow, you might come in a week from now, but if it's too long, that doesn't count as Yotze V'Nichnas. Okay, and the Shulchan doesn't tell you what that time is, how much is too long. He doesn't say what too long is, but we can all guess that a month is too long. Okay, if you visit a plant monthly, then you're too long. Okay, when Shulchan talked about long, he probably meant was like if you go to Daven Mincha, that's not too long. You go to Shachris, maybe that's too long. That's like the range of what he's talking about. He's not talking about that you don't show up for 2 months. You come on, January 12th and February 14th.
Why not? If the mirsus is, then we could close down the plant.
So
it's a big enough mirsus, so then the interval could be longer.
So what are you trying to say? You're trying to say?
I'm saying if the mirsus is really a real mirsus, therefore you could extend it.
Actually, you're right. We're going to get to what you're saying. That's really correct. But if you read the Shulchan Aruch, you wouldn't say that because Shulchan Aruch says there is mirsus. You can come at any point, but it's just not.
Anyways, the guy that says he always shows up every 15 minutes. Okay, so
If they can't,
all say he'll shop for 45 minutes. Nice bottle.
A lot of places want to kosher.
The guy says he'll shop every 15 minutes.
If it's too long, whatever long, let's say long as a day.
Showing up short.
Yeah, but let's say long as a day. Let's imagine long means a day. If also you don't a day.
The mirsus is the way because
Okay, so the question. So
There's other reasons why Yotze V'Nichnas is no good.
Because what else would you tell me?
Lock the door.
Because what?
You can lock the door.
That they won't let you in. You're saying so?
Even in time.
You're saying in the Yotze V'Nichnas and Shulchan Aruch's cases that I'm walking back into my house, so I can get in whenever I want to. Yotze V'Nichnas in a factory. That's what he's talking about.
On a back way, because I can see you without a help there.
So you're saying over here they have a choice to lock you out.
They can keep you up for 15 minutes easily.
Okay.
I was tied up. Whatever the guy was,
That I'm not sure if I can answer that question. I maybe can answer that question, but that I don't know. See, then I
You
don't
only
know.
answer the question you can answer.
Right. No, this is
the same thing that happened at plant yesterday.
Yeah.
Mr. Common called me up and says, I'm sorry, but they're not letting me go in. So I said, you give him a message that we're going to build the company that we're going to, you're going to have to pay for that, and we're going to come again. So all of a sudden, magically,
Okay, there we go. Okay, fine. So anyhow, so that was a question. Okay, so now I don't know if you want to hear both answers, both parts answered. Okay, well, I'll take the short version of one part. I asked Hashgachah's question. Good question. Don't know. So he had one way to be moderate. Okay, we're not going to talk about it. One way to be moderate, which is very weak in the sense that if that would be the right answer, we'd only be able to give Hashgachah commercially in very limited cases. Okay, so I'm going to leave that. I'm sorry. Okay. Rabbi Shachbar's answer, his answer was basically, that's correct, And we can only be makel to give hashgacha commercially in very specific cases. Okay, so the two of us would have both been out of a job, and both of us would have been unemployed. But so that was her Shach. And Rav Belsky said, no, you got it all wrong. It's completely different. That's all I'm saying. He said, you got it all wrong. Those dinim, that din, and this is, I think, what you're trying to say. I'm not sure, but this is those dinim of Yotzev Nichnas is talking about the Yid is making food. You're in the Yid's house. I have food. The shiksa is working in my house, and she has a mirror that she's going to get caught and lose her job, or she's going to get screamed at if she does the wrong thing. So she'll be careful because she knows it's important to her. He says there's another Gemara. The Gemara on Samach Alpha base in Aruch. The Gemara says is if a person is being mataher yeder shalakum, you are helping the guy make his wine kosher. Okay, and of course, if the guy makes wine, it's tam yain, it's straight. So the Yid is helping the guy make his wine kosher. So the guy, what is he doing? He's making his own wine, but he's making it, he wants to be able to sell it to Jews also. So you're helping him make his wine for Jews, okay, which is what companies are doing. When we go to a potato chip company, they make it kosher so they can sell their stuff to Jewish people. That's exactly the case is. And what does the Gemara say? The Gemara says it's kosher if the Yid comes, if he's watching all the time, or if it's a person, the Gemara's words are, a memuna habol kitzin. A memuna, like someone who's in charge, mashgiach, habol kitzin, who comes at regular intervals. The Gemara says, that doesn't make any sense. If he comes at regular intervals, the guy knows when he's going to show up. If he comes every Tuesday at 10, he knows when he's going to be there. That doesn't, no, forget it. It's the opposite. It's a memuna she'ein habol kitzin. It's a person who's in charge of this thing, and he doesn't come on any regular basis. He comes in at an erratic schedule. He comes in whenever he wants to. In that case, it's much. Now, Rashi, in using when the Gemara said the wrong way, which is that he bala kitzin, Rashi says that's bad because he uses the word mirsus. Because he's not afraid because he knows you're going to show up at a certain time. Okay, but so what Belsky said was like this: in a case where the company is trying to sell his product to Yidden, that's what his goal is. That's what the Gemara's case is. He's making wine for Yidden, and he knows that if you might show up at any time, and if you show up at the wrong time, you're going to catch him, and he's going to be out of business. It's not a matter of he's going to lose his job or even someone's going to get upset at him. If the guy's going to lose his business, he's building a business to sell things to Jews, and he's going to lose that business, then there's a lesser requirement, and the Gemara says he has to be a mamuna she'ein bala kitzin. The Gemara says she'ein bala kitzin. You have to just not come on a regular schedule. As long as you come with some kind of erratic schedule that he doesn't know, and the din Shulchan Aruch is where it's your house. If you're going to his house, so to speak, where he's trying to make food for Yidden and he's trying to make it kosher, then as long as you come on an erratic schedule, that's fine. As long as you're not coming with some kind of regularity, that's good. And so he says, now this din is not brought in Shulchan Aruch like that, but he thinks that din is not the same din as what's brought in Shulchan Aruch. That the Yotzev Nichnas has to be Yotzev Nichnas that doesn't stay for a long time. Okay? Which is maybe that's along the lines of what you said. Okay? That's what I thought you were trying to say, or along those lines. Which is, in this case, the company has too much to lose by being caught. So here we can handle a longer, extended amount of time before we have to be there. What's the problem?
No, that's
only happy. Okay. So we have to. We can handle. We're willing to take a longer amount of time than the person not being there than we would otherwise. Okay. But now, so in case if that's correct, then that's the whole reason why we do hashgachah. Then all commercial hashgachah then is hanging. Really, it's hanging on the mashgiach being erratic. The mashgiach not being on a regular schedule. What? Right. The mashgiach has to be. I had a place that I went to, and they said, Rabbi, what are you doing here? You always come on Monday morning.
That's a chain of Pagua.
Yeah. Well, the person comes and says, what are you doing here? You always come on Monday morning. I never realized that. It wasn't I was doing it on purpose. That I never realized that for whatever reason that just became my habit to go on Monday mornings to this company. So I started. I never go on Monday mornings anymore. Okay, I won't go anymore on Monday morning because he realized that was some kind of schedule to it. I knew a mashgiach who, for whatever reason, his hashgachah is far away from his house. His hashgachah work, he basically lives away from home, okay, for most of the week. And he tells his Rabbi Machshir, it's good that I live far away from home, even though I have to do so much traveling, because I come to companies at 2 o'clock in the morning. Companies that work 24 hours a day. I show up at the craziest hours. I'm not home with the family. So whenever I have time, I show up to a city at 11 o'clock at night, and I go to the company and see what's doing. Because I'm on this crazy schedule. And that's true. There is something like that same mashgiach once got paid a bonus to stay for Shabbos. This company works on Shabbos also. He stayed near the company for Shabbos with his family, and he went into the company on Shabbos. that they should know that it cannot come in any kind of crazy times. Okay, so that's the in case if you give hashgacha, you have to do that. Okay, now that I'm going to now say something. We'll try to do this carefully.
What was the Havim meaning of the Gemara? Did the Gemara mean that it comes quite often? Is that what it meant?
Well, what is the most think? Why it should be mutter? Why should mutter? I'm not sure. Maybe when it's like regularly, like on a schedule, meaning as it happens all the time. Maybe that's more. The Gemara says it doesn't make sense. The Gemara says if he does that, then there's no mercy. The Gemara doesn't use the word mercy. Rashi uses that word mercy, which we're sort of connecting to Yotzei Nichnas. That's the wording we use. Mercy. So it sort of has like a connection to it. Okay? But what we're saying then, this is all good and fine for the way we do Hashgachah, okay? Which we think, of course, is great. We like the way we do Hashgachah. It's the American way of doing Hashgachah. Okay? The European way of doing Hashgachah is very different. Okay? They do much more, they do less visits, but they also do, often they're doing announced visits. They call the company and say, hi, can I make an appointment to come next Tuesday and spend the day at your company? Okay? They do that. So now, if they're doing that, if your hashgacha is based on mirsis, well, what's the mirsis if you have a person who makes an appointment? Okay, and that's the reason why, well, that's one of the reasons why some of the American hashgachas are uncomfortable with the way they do that. Okay, now
Yesterday's conversation was now for Europe, and they have requested that we should announce. He said
is against our whole idea of how we do hashgacha. Okay, so now I have to tell you that their mahalach, they have a different understanding for how they do their hashgacha. Okay? I'll just tell you what they're thinking. They're not thinking the way I just described to you, that they're trying to create mirses. That's not their goal. They say yes, they want to make mirses also, and they say that they have the rights to come whenever they want to. They have a right to show up unannounced, but they say European companies get very upset when you show up unannounced. It's a culture which is, they've been taught that the rabbi announces before him, and they think that they're being accused of something doing wrong if the rabbi shows up without an appointment. Like, what are you doing here? Why'd you come? As if, so you must suspect me of something. So because of that, they try not to do that. But there's a different thing, which is, if you look in, we know ourselves, and if you look in Shulchan, you'll find that there are certain foods that are mutter without hashgacha. Now, the Shulchan doesn't say without hashgacha. The Shulchan says you could buy this food from Goyim because we all know that it's made in a way that doesn't pose a problem. And we know it ourselves. If someone calls up and says, hi, can I buy sugar without sugar? Say, yeah, you can buy sugar. Why? Because based on what we know about how you make sugar, we believe that the chances of it going wrong are so far-fetched that, yeah, you can buy sugar without hashgacha because we know that it's okay. Right? So that, and Shulchan Aruch has examples of that. There are also things that you could buy this thing even if you weren't there because we assume that it was done okay. That's just an assumption. So what they do is, they say is, we have such a thorough and deep understanding of the company. I mean, their people who they send into these plans, supposedly, are people who are much, and I've met some of them, are much more qualified, and they don't spend an hour in the company, they spend 8 hours in the company. They say we're much more thorough and we have a much better understanding of the business of this company, so that when we're finished, we can say is the way that this company functions doesn't pose problems for Kashrus. So it's sort of like saying we've now investigated and what this company makes can be used, so to speak, without hashgacha. I know it sounds funny.
Making the guy go to what?
Right, sort of. Okay, we're 2TR. So this company, we research this company enough that we can say it's kosher, so to speak, without hashgacha. It's not that we're creating nurses that they won't change it because we're going to catch them. It's that we know their system, we know how their style, we know how they work, that we can be sure, no, this company gets their alcohol in rail cars. And they have the same contract with the same big company for 12 years. We're confident that they would never change their supply. They have another 6-year contract with this company. We know they're not going to supply it, so we know it's kosher. Not because they would be afraid we're going to catch them, but more because we understand the system, and therefore, so to speak, it became kosher without hashgacha, so to speak, something along that line. And so they're coming with a whole different way of approaching it. Right? But that's reasonable. That's potentially reasonable. If you do all those things that you said. I mean, if your person who goes in really has this deep, thorough understanding, and in every case he can say to you, in this case I'm comfortable that I really know how they operate, and I really can feel confident that it's going to be kosher forever. Which is to say, is if any of us wants to move to France and become mashgiach, then we might not be qualified. You know what I'm saying? So we have a different way of doing things. We set them up right, we think we know what we're doing, and we go there to catch mistakes, to make sure we keep them in line, we keep educating them, we work with them, we wouldn't be able to give a hashgachah there. hashgachah of we're going to show up twice a year and spend the whole day there, and say that we now have this confidence that the company's running is a whole different style.
Obviously, it's a very limited amount of companies because the average company over here could change at any given time.
Right, you couldn't do it for mom and pop operations. You'd have to
Even
have.
for even somewhat larger operations, you can't do it.
So you're saying what I'm saying?
What are you saying?
He's saying is that.
Change frequently?
Yeah, because it's a
They don't.
I'm saying they also, I'm sure they do.
So in other words,
It's not a very
if
specific company that don't change.
you want to use this model,
He's getting cash, in other words.
Yeah.
no, he's not actually saying is that.
Very,
This
very-
model would be limited to very specific cases. You have to have the right mashgiach, you have the right kind of company. It has to be the right
Company
setup.
that for some reason will not change the alcohol supply. Will not change it,
Right. So you have to. And there's a lot of things that have to be.
Why shouldn't they change the supply?
No, I'm not arguing. I'm just saying is that their basis for doing it is not in order to create a mirror of they I might catch them at any minute. I mean, there is that a little bit that they might catch me, but myself, I come in twice a year. So what's going to happen? I'm going to catch them. And what happened to the case 6 months? There isn't a continuous like what we try to build is that there's a continuous. They would never do anything wrong. None of our companies ever do anything wrong because they know the rabbit might show up and catch them. Right? So that's what we think. At least. We think that we're going to do that. So, but they're coming from a house.
Thing, yeah.
We make that so. Yeah, no. So they say the same thing about us. They say, you guys make mirrors. You send in any Shmendrik who lives around the corner who never saw a plant before in his life and he spends a half an hour walking to the company. You think he's making a mirrors? They say they think that we're not doing a good job either. They might be right. I'm saying they think that their model is better than ours.
That's what we see that the company doesn't really together, Smith.
Right. Okay.
But see, that model works. That model works for if a company's using ingredients that many companies are using own ingredients that they can't get cheaper. It's not like they're not kosher versions cheaper. It's like the ingredients, the essential ingredients are kosher. The whole shasha that came. Even ice cream companies, except for the gelatin, it's like nothing. There was nothing in an ice cream company that you can can get cheaper
In the trade version.
yeah, all the major companies of oil, or things like it's not any cheaper when it's not kosher. So all those halachos of Shulchan Aruch, it's very easy to say what they're saying. I mean, they have a contract with us. They're promising to get a kosher, and they're not the reason. There's no net of a chalif.
Right. So
that's good for that. For ingredients, like a cheese powder. That's it. You can get it cheaper. You can really get it cheaper. That's
then
if
they're honest.
What are you doing either?
If they're honest,
out of it. So
if they're honest, then they won't let it in that kind of case. What they would say is, if this is a small operation, well, this is something so sensitive like cheese powder that it costs the kosher is so much more expensive, then they might not let their system. They might say, if they're honest, then they would say we would limit this kind of supervision for the right kind of company. It has to be the right setup, the right kind of.
And I don't think our sufficient is good for that either. Our system is good for that either. I mean, actually, I think it is good, but I don't think because of the Rebelsky's teretz. I don't think it's very good. It comes into the chaykas, but the other question, the guy can lock the door and might say we're not going in the middle of the night. Okay. The company wants in the middle of the night if they want to switch their cheese things or whatever, they can do it. And the guy at 2 o'clock in the morning, the guy has no fear that no real fear that we're
you wait
doing
for half an hour to put it in the side room.
Okay, so the Europeans say that about us, which is they say is our system, the way we do it. He says when I come every 6 months, I look at all their records for the whole 6 months. I don't just spot around here and there. Have you ever walked into a company? They say we're in the middle of an audit. Sorry, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, we can't talk to us. We're in the middle of an audit for 3 days. That's what they do. They do a thorough back and forth to see everything. So it's not like they're spot checking. And the company knows when they show up, the rabbi's going to be here the whole day, Monday and Tuesday. He's going to be here, and he's going to look at all my papers. So then they have a different. So they say, this guy, you sent some guy, whoever was.
So why is that matter? What's the smart one? Why is that matter? What is that?
We feel comfortable. I understand that.
But something that's cheaper. You get cheaper cheese patty. It's cheaper. So why does that matter?
That's a good point.
So I think the answer is it's like similar. That we're checking back and forth and looking for all different signs where you order from, and they're afraid of getting caught. That's as good as one.
As a status of one simon. Right. So for things that you could use one simon on, like that, so then you use one simon on, that checking has the same effect as having one simon on it. I have a okay. A lot
and they answer to other things also. That's when we go into a company. Let's say newlyweds, a kosher cheese batter, trade cheese batter, right there, right. Because they have a system. They got a number system. They got to record lot numbers. It's a big deal. They got to be able to show which lot went, which product went into which thing.
So if it's true, so I have to just tell you that there's a weakness in what we do, which is, if we had that kind of situation, then we shouldn't allow them to use the hechsher for X amount of time. I mean, we should say is we certify you as of January 1st. but not until April 1st, till we see that the system really works, will we let you give that, will we let you use our Hashgachah. We should be saying,
You're on a contract that if you violate things, we can pull that immediately.
so you're saying that that's enough to,
I understand. Fine.